Recording started. Welcome back, everybody. It is the first portion, a brand new book of the Torah. It's the first portion of the fifth book of the Torah, of the book of Devarim. Very interestingly, this book of the Torah is called the Book of Review. All right, Parsha's Chumash Devarim is called the Mishnah Torah, the review of the Torah. So it's the first book in the fifth book of the Torah. It's the 44th portion from the beginning of the Torah, and there are 105 verses, 1,548 words, and 5,972 letters. And as I started adding now, it's from Deuteronomy 1, verse 1, all the way to Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse number 22. Okay, what are the mitzvahs? We have two mitzvahs, two prohibitive mitzvahs, two mitzvahs lo saseh, and this parsha is talking about Moshe and the nation. It's the last 36 days of Moshe's life, and here Moshe is going to give a farewell speech over the next 36 days where he's preparing the nation for greatness. And he's going to lay it out. He's going to say it straight, exactly the way it is. Okay, so number one is the book of review. The Torah portion begins with the last of this Torah portion begins the last of the 5 books of the Torah, Sefer Devarim. It's called Devarim in Hebrew, and this book is also called Mishnah Torah, the repetition of the Torah. Hence the Greek English title Deuteronomy, which means to review. Sefer Devarim relates what Moshe told the Jewish people during the last 5 weeks of his life as they prepared to cross the Jordan River into the land of Israel. So if you know how the map of Israel looks, Israel's on the Mediterranean, and then it goes down, today it goes down to Eilat, but that's not really part of Eretz Yisrael. The bottom part, below Beersheba already is not part of Israel. So Dimona and Mitzvah Ramon and all of those Yatvata, all of those places that are south of Beersheba are not part of the real land of Israel. But Syria and Lebanon and a lot of Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria are part of Israel. The land of Israel goes all the way up to Beirut and to all of this. It goes all the way up there. That's all part of the land of Israel. So in the times of Mashiach, we will get that part of the land back. And right now they're fighting us in every little town in Israel. As soon as Mashiach comes, that's all they're going to run for the hills. They're not going to want to be there. Trust me. Okay, so Sefer Devarim relates. So now the Jewish people, if we drew a little map here, if you want, I'll just draw a little map. It's not drawn to scale. Okay, so here we go. We have this, we have here, and if you go, so here's the land of Israel, and here you have, okay. So now, here we go here. Okay, so here we go. Not drawn to scale, and I'm not a map specialist, okay? So I'm going to do it like this so that people online can see it as well. So this is like just about what Israel looks like, okay? Now over here is Beersheba. Over here is Jerusalem. Here would be Tel Aviv, where the airport is. And this is like southern Israel. This would be like Eilat. All of this here is Sinai, the Sinai Peninsula. So now, down at the bottom of that is where the Mount Sinai was. Okay, so the Jewish people came from Egypt and they got to Mount Sinai eventually, and then they crossed over into Jordan and now are going to cross back into Israel. Okay, so now Moshe passes away here in the Jordan side. Okay, yes, sir.
I'm confused because I thought he was living in Midian, and that's on the other side of the Jordan. It's on the Arabian Peninsula.
On the Jordanian side?
Yeah.
Well, that's what they
Isn't that where Midian was?
yeah. So
Is Moshe living in Midian when he goes to see the mountain?
right. So that's where they were. They didn't go to the land of Israel yet.
No. You said that Mount Sinai is down there.
Oh yeah. Mount Sinai is down there. Mount Sinai is there.
How can you see that when you?
They traveled. They traveled. Remember last week we talked about the 42 different places they traveled.
I'm talking about when Moses first had encountered the burning bush.
Oh, so yes, he's traveling. He's going here, going there, coming here, going there. Yeah. We're the wandering Jews, Right. So Moshe now tells the Jewish people, choose your life. Okay, it's a choice. No one should ever say that, well, this is my predisposition. This is just the way I am. You choose the way you live your life. And Moshe is here giving a declaration to the people saying, choose the good life. And we're going to see this repeated again and again and again and again throughout the book of Deuteronomy, throughout the book of Devarim. We're going to constantly see Moshe reminding the people, hey, be careful, follow those commandments, choose the right way, okay? And he says that Moshe reviews the mitzvahs with the people, stressing the change of lifestyle they are about to undergo, from the supernatural existence in the desert under Moshe's guidance to the apparently natural life they will experience under Joshua's leadership in the land. So first is they're not going to have the manna anymore. Now, we are going to have the manna still. What does that mean? Anyone here ever have a job and you got a paycheck? That's manna. God makes it that you can succeed. God makes it, brings about. Now, it doesn't look like the manna. It may not taste like the manna, and I have to work hard for it. But there's still, the blessing is there, but it's in disguise. It used to be revealed right there in front of you. You would just go right out of your tent and boom, it was right. If you were righteous, it was right there. If you weren't righteous, you got to go to the end of the tent. God would say, right, bad boy, you got to go all the way to the end. Right? And everybody else knew it too. That's right. So, learn lessons. Okay, the Torah, the central theme of this week's Parsha is the sin of the spies, the Meraglim. It's a repetition. The Torah portion opens with Moshe alluding to the sins of the previous generation who died in the desert. He describes what would have happened if they would have not sinned by sending spies into the land of Israel. Hashem would have given them, without a fight, all the land from the Mediterranean to the Euphrates, including the lands of Ammon and Moab and Edom. They would have received it all without picking up an arrow, right? Not even an arrow would have to be flung, nothing. But guess what? We chose, like, no. We want to feel victory in our own hands. We want to, and that's the big challenge that we have today, is that we're in this battle where people want to have. How about this? If you went over to 100 people today and you said, if you have the opportunity to work in a good job where you'll get paid, would you pick that over a promise that Hashem will take care of you? Most people will say, no, I want the good job. I want the good job. Why? Because I know I'm going to get paid. Right? What do you mean you know you're going to get paid? Hashem is promising you. Yeah, but this, I know, because so you're trusting your own work over Hashem's work. And it's a big battle. It's a big struggle. It's a big struggle because how can I know? Well, we talked about this when we talked about Shabbos at the Talmud class this past week. We're talking about that all the expenses that someone has for Shabbos, Hashem is going to cover. And Hashem says, test me on this. Test me. Charge the Shabbos things to my expense and you'll see I'll pay for it. Yeah, but what's if he doesn't? So I'm not going to, you know what? Try him. Test him. I'm afraid. I don't know. There are the halacha says that not only for Shabbos food, but also for foods for Rosh Chodesh. So why doesn't everybody go to the restaurant and buy the fattest steak possible? Buy the kosher wagyu steak. It's $250 a pound, right? Why don't we buy that in honor of a Chodesh? The reason we don't is because we're like, maybe God's not going to pay for it, and then it's going to come out of my. Well, you don't believe enough in it, so that's why He's not going to pay for it, right? If you believed enough in it, you wouldn't think twice. But we want 100% guarantee, which is never 100%, by the way. It's never 100%. How many times does someone say, listen, a guy told me, he said to me this week, he said, we're cashing the check September 15th. We're cashing the check, right? September 15th, we're cashing, and we're going to give you then. And then we're going to have money for our family, and we're going to have money for this. How many things can happen between now and September 15th? How many times can that deal turn over by now and September 15th? Oh, we have a contract, and we have this. We've all seen that, right? We have an agreement with our contractor. It's going to be done. And he doesn't show up, right? And how many times, right?
Yeah.
So, but when Hashem promises something, it's money in the bank. The problem is that it takes a little bit of faith.
Yeah.
It takes, if we have enough intellect, we'll realize that God has a pretty good track record. He's got a pretty good track record. He's taken care of us in the past. He's done a fabulous job. So why are we worried? Why are we worried? Okay. So the entire generation would die in the desert, and Moshe would not enter the land of Israel, Eretz Yisrael. And he begins the review. Moshe starts to review the Torah before the Jewish people. He tells them about the Exodus from Egypt and everything that happened while they were in the desert for 40 years. That's interesting and important, that if you look at any mitzvah we have in the Torah, like putting on tefillin, mezuzah, tzitzis, Shabbos, we say the same remembrance every single time. Zecher li'yitzias mitzrayim, to remember where God took us out of Egypt. Why is this single event so integral for our faith? So if there was anybody who has a challenge in their knowledge of Hashem, if anybody has a challenge of their knowledge of Hashem, so I would have a bet with them, okay? What would it take to make you believe in God? What would it take? They said, okay, if you tell me that there's going to be a miracle where God just like throws a pillar of fire right down here in front of the table, right here in front of the class, then I'll believe in God. Right? So we know that when that fire comes, that pillar of fire comes and comes right down on the table exactly as we described, they're going to find another excuse not to.
Right.
Because someone who doesn't believe in Hashem has an issue of letting go. It's not that you didn't give me enough proof, but we had enough proof. What was the proof? Where Hashem says, "B'koach gadol," right? B'yad chazaka hotzi Hashem. Hashem took us with an outstretched arm, with a strong hand. Meaning, why does it need to use the example of a hand? Because you see it. It's right there in front of you. You see, God takes the Jewish people out. Takes the Jewish people out, and all of the miracles that are promised happened. And the splitting of the sea, and everything that was promised exactly the way it was promised came to fruition. Huh? Right? All of the miracles. Hashem says, no. Usually my miracles are hidden. This time it's going to be an open revelation so that everyone can see. And never forget that open relationship, because you're going to try to think about it in 3,300 years when you're sitting in Houston, Texas. You're like, is God really around? Did he do any miracles? Did anything really happen? I didn't see it. That's why every mitzvah that we have brings back the link, the connection to the miracle of the Exodus from Egypt. So when we kiss that mezuzah, what we're doing is we're remembering, yes, Hashem is one. Hashem is our God. Hashem is our Father, because he took us out of Egypt with an outstretched arm. and he brought us through the Yam Suf on dry land, and sustained us in the desert, and brought us to the Holy Land. All of this is not just tales. This is things that actually happened to us. There's proofs to how we know that it happened to us. And maybe someone made it up and just wrote it like, what's the guy's name? The Mormon guy? Smith, Mr. Smith? John Smith, right? That's not to compare between holy and unholy. But that nonsense is ridiculous. Okay? Was anybody there? No. Did anybody? No. There's no evidence.
Took
Here,
the tablets back to heaven.
there you go. And nobody can see it, right? But here you have a totally different experience, and it's the exact opposite. Every religion subsequent to Judaism has the same farce. And that is one guy saying he privately had a revelation, and therefore believe me or else. Right? Except for Judaism. Judaism was no individual revelation. It was a national revelation. And that's why in our Torah, there's no obligation for anybody, except for the Jewish people, to abide by the laws of the Torah. You don't want to? You don't have to. No problem. There's 7 laws to keep humanity sane, make a court system, right? And for your own benefit, don't eat from the Avram and Achai, from a living animal. Put it to death before you eat from it. They don't have the obligation to slaughter animals like we do. They don't have any of those obligations. Right? 7 Noahide laws, and that's it. We actually had right here in the Torch Center, we had a group of Noahides who wanted to be real Noahides. The Rambam says that in order to be a real Noahide, you have to accept in front of a Jewish court those 7 Noahide laws and to denounce all idolatry. And we sat here as a Bezdin, and about 15 people all denounced all deities, accepted Hashem and the 7 commandments of the Noahide laws. Really? Yeah, it was quite an event. Wow. It was really special. But they wanted to fulfill what the Rambam says. It's not enough for someone to just say, no, they have to publicly denounce all the other idols and deities. Okay. So it's very important to constantly remember. And here Moshe Rabbeinu is reviewing with the Jewish people. Let's get it clear. Now, imagine if one word of what Moshe says was not accurate. No. What would we do? We'd say, hey, whoa, Moshe, whoa. What's going on over here? That never happened. We never saw anything. Amalek didn't have it. All right? That's not what happened. You can't write a Torah that will be accepted from generation to generation if it isn't accurate. You throw it in the nearest recycling bin and say, thank you very much, Moses. I'm going my way. I'm not going to elect to be the people who are going to be the most executed, the most pursued on a rumor, only on something which is clear and factual. So he encourages them to observe the Torah and the mitzvos when in the land of Israel. Moshe recalls how he appointed judges to help him judge the people, as it had been too hard for him and time consuming to help the entire people all alone. So he goes through all of that. And then he reminds the Jewish people of their trips through the desert, of the spies they sent to the Holy Land, and how they no longer wanted to move there after hearing their negative report. And of how, because of that, Hashem decreed that entire generation would pass away in the desert and not go into the Holy Land. Right? You complained. You're right. You're not going again. It's very interesting that we don't see almost ever in the Torah where Hashem says, and it will imagine, I'm so sorry. Okay, fine, you can. No, that doesn't work, right? It's like we sometimes think as parents, right? We sometimes think that like, I'll have mercy. It's okay. They didn't really mean it. Sometimes we have to stand our ground and say, you know what? I said no, that means no. No means no. No doesn't mean, well, if you cry, kick and scream,
Well, maybe,
throw a tantrum, then it means yes. No means no sometimes. All right. And then there's leadership. We see the great leadership quality of Moshe. I'll tell you why I like to talk about Moshe's leadership, because Moshe realized, like we should all realize, he realized what his purpose in life was. His purpose of life was to be that person who guides the Jewish people. Someone who's a leader realizes that part of my guiding the people, it's not about me. It's about doing what's best for them. And therefore, what's best for them is to have a new leader, because I'm going to die in 36 days. And because I'm going to die, says Moshe, in 36 days, they better have a leader, not only that's a great leader in Joshua, but also someone that they're going to see me respect. And if I respect Joshua, they will as well. So he doesn't, many times leaders think of it's all about me. And they say that the great leaders of corporations, when they step down from their post and they give the company over to the next leader, they're able to succeed more because the previous leader prepared everything with an exit strategy so that now someone else can take it over. Some leaders think, I only want it to succeed if I'm here. And if I'm not here, I want it to fall apart on its face so everybody will know how great of a leader I was. That's a terrible leader. This week's Torah portion ends with the message from Moshe to Yehoshua, the next leader of the Jewish people, who will be the one to take them into the Holy Land. He tells him not to be afraid of the enemies because God will fight for them and for him. Okay, so that's an important thing, is that every single leader needs to recognize it's not me. There's a power that the Almighty gives to world leaders to succeed in their ways. So it says, Yad Malachim V'Sarim B'Yad Hashem. Leiv Malachim V'Sarim B'Yad Hashem. The heart of the Malachim are the kings, and the Sarim are the ministers, the leaders, the congressmen, the senators, the presidents, the prime ministers of all the countries. In whose hands are they? They're in Hashem's hands. But they have one choice of whether or not they're going to follow the ways of Hashem or not follow the ways of Hashem. It's like, when Hashem made a decree that 6 million Jews were going to be murdered, right? The Nazis didn't need to be the ones to do it. It could have happened a totally different way. It could have happened as a plague. It could have happened as a famine. There were many. It was a decree from heaven, but someone said, "Oh, I want to be the one," and that's why he's going to be. Because otherwise, you can say, it doesn't make any sense. Why is he getting punished? Why should he get punished? It was a decree from heaven. Yeah, but you didn't need to be the one to do it. You stood up and said, "Me, I'm going to be the one. I'm going to be the one who wants to execute them, and therefore he's going to be punished." It goes to the good as well. When goodness comes to this world. You say, "Oh, he was a great president." Not necessarily, but he chose to be the good one. So if, for example, someone does something which is good for the Jewish people, there was a decree from heaven that should happen. But they were the one who jumped to say, "I want to be the one to help them." So here, Moshe is telling Yehoshua, just know Hashem is in charge of everything. Don't feel like you're so high and mighty. I'm the leader of the Jewish people now, and now I'm going. No. Just remember, Hashem is the one who fights all the fights for you. It's not the idea that only the battles. Every challenge you have, recognize that everything's in the hands of Hashem. Yes.
No, I'll ask you.
No. Ask.
Okay, so I'm wondering, going through all this, all right, and listening, that my first, Hashem destroyed the world through a flood.
Right.
Didn't like what was here and wanted to restart.
Right.
Then he enslaves the chosen people for 200 years.
Right.
Leaves them out. Threatens to kill them all the time. I'm going to wipe you out. Moses has to go in there
Yeah.
and try to save it.
That's the leader's job, correct?
Then throughout history, they've been expelled. They've been persecuted. They're still persecuted to this day.
Correct.
When you've got the killer of the most people ever is the Catholic Church. They
Correct.
destroyed more people than anybody.
100%.
They're still around, flourishing, and the Jews have to battle themselves for everything. How does that make them the chosen people?
So it's all in the Torah. The Torah says, why is Yaakov called Yaakov? Because he's always going to be at the heel of Esav. He grabbed onto the heel of Esav. Who is Esav?
Edom, Rome.
Yeah,
Rome. That's who they are. It's the Catholics.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're always going to be. And if you, I don't know what mathematically it would be, right? But if you take a full body and you take just the heel, what's the percentage of the body size, the body mass that the heel? I don't know. It'd be 1%. 1%. And think of less than 1%, right? You think of how much the Jews are relative to the number of Catholics, or right? It's maybe 1%,
No.
right? Less
It's a billion versus, it's a billion
versus
versus
15 million, 16 million.
Yeah, 15 million. You
So-
do the math.
Right. So we're always going to be the fewer, and we're always going to be less dominant, but we'll be much more powerful. Who has made more change to the world than the Jews?
That's right.
Who has done more good for the world than the Jews? Who has had exactly?
Should you have to be in misery a lot in order to?
Yes, because that's what keeps us on track. Yes, 100%.
Okay.
Whenever the Jewish people were successful, they turned away from God.
Yep.
And they needed the nations of the world to give us a whip, and then we get back into shape, and then we get successful again. You know why? For millennia, the Jewish people were always diamond dealers. They were merchants. They went from place to place. You know why? And they always lived in places that had water next to them.
For trade.
Not only for trade, because they knew that if they invested in real estate, tomorrow they'll be kicked out of the land. What are they going to do with the real estate? Right? My grandparents' house in Germany, well, belongs to us, but someone else is living in it now, right? Because the Germans kicked them out. And my grandmother's house in Lithuania, someone else is living in there now, right? Real estate doesn't go with us. But if we are tradesmen and we live right next to the water, we just get into a ship and get out. Right? Take our diamonds, put it in our pocket, and leave. And that's something which is tangible, something which we can move from place to place, and that has value wherever you go. But you can't pick up your real estate and put it on your boat. It's not going to work. The Jewish people were always. Right now, we're living in the United States, which is by our sages of this generation. It's called the Kingdom of Kindness. America is the kingdom of kindness.
Yeah, but it's turning, isn't it?
Okay, this is not a political anti-Semitism. That's true. Look, there are things that are worrisome and concerning. There's no question. But
It's always been, but it seems to be more
we have to be more vigilant, and we have to be careful, and we have to make sure that we are a light unto the nations. That's our responsibility. Our responsibility is to be a light unto the nations. And when we're not a light unto the nations, anti-Semitism grows, and it can be a tragedy. So, my dear friends, have a magnificent Shabbos. Thank you all for being here tonight. Mazel tov. We should always share in simchas, and God willing, we'll continue to learn and to grow and to connect further and further. Amen.
Mazel tov, mazel tov.
Thank you, Mazel tov.
Wife's in the hospital.